If you just clicked on this video and you're looking at the title and going, I wonder if that's clickbait, I can confidently assure you that it is not. Hello, internet! So today, oh my god, do I have a story for you. This story actually happened 2 years ago, but when it initially happened, I was not allowed to talk about it on the internet. They specifically told all the extras, like, do not take photos of the set, do not take videos of the set, do not post anything to social media, like, basically don't spoil the episode. And the episode that I was in did not air for a year after we shot it. And by the time that I guess I would have been able to talk about it on the internet, I just kind of forgot. But I was thinking about this recently, and I was like, this story is funny as hell, it's really ridiculous, and I might as well tell it on the internet. And it's funny, like, it's now been a year since that episode initially aired, and I've gotten like 5 Facebook messages from my friends that are like, did I just see you on an episode of Girls? And I was just like, yeah, you did. But anyway, let's just get into this story. 2 years ago, I registered with an extras casting agency called Central Casting New York. They have a counterpart in LA called Central Casting LA. And basically, it's just like they cast extras for TV and film. And it's funny, I remembered that I registered because I wanted to try to be on an episode of Law & Order SVU. It actually didn't end up working out. But I had seen that they were like looking for extras for an episode of SVU. Like they needed people that looked like college students. And I was like, oh, I'm a college student. Like I was a freshman in college at that point. And by the way, to this day, I don't look my age. People are still like, are you 16? I'm like, nope, I'm 21. Like these glasses are like my only defense against epic baby face. But a couple months after that, I got a call from them and they said, hey, like, would you be available to work on these 2 days? And this was kind of unusual because the way that Central Casting normally works is that you go to this like online website that like if you're registered for them, you have access to. Like you can't just access it if you're a regular member of the public. You can see all the listings of things that they need extras for, and if any of them fit your like description, you can sign up for them. And it doesn't guarantee that you're gonna work on that, but you can apply to work on like anything that you fit the description for. But it's rare that they'll actually like call people and ask them if they can work, like if they'll actually like call you instead of it being the other way around. And so this is how this had happened. And I remember like at the registration, they were like, yeah, this is rare, but it can happen. And so anyway, they called me and were like, hey, are you available to work on Girls this day and this day? And I was just like, yeah, that's awesome. Like I'm totally in. And they were like, okay, we're probably gonna call you within the next few hours with some more information. So, you know, stay by your phone. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like, thank you. And I was super excited because this was my first professional paying acting job. I was 18. I was super unemployed at the time. Like now I literally have about 5 jobs. Back then I was so freaking unemployed. It was insane. And so I was just like really excited. And then a few hours later, I get another call from them and they were like, hi, Amy, we just want to quickly check in and see if you're okay with something. And let me just mention that when you apply to be registered with Central Casting, you fill out this really long application. And there's like an entire page worth of stuff that you have to check off if you're okay or not okay with. And so there is like things that you would expect, like, you know, are you okay with nudity? Partial nudity, being in your underwear. But then there's also a lot of stuff that's like, I guess could fall under like religious things. They said like, are you okay eating meat? Are you okay doing this, that, and the other thing? And so when they called me and they said, hey, we just want to check in and see if you're okay with something, I was like, yeah, like, you know, what is it? And then there was a pause. And I was like, during that pause, I'm like going through everything in my head. Like I checked off this, like I said, I don't want to do nudity. Like, oh my God, I was like going through everything in my head. And then the person finally goes like, yeah, for this scene, like it's a frat party scene, we want you to be standing in a line of girls who are like waiting to go to the bathroom because you're so drunk that like you're about to throw up. And while you're waiting on this line to go and puke your guts out in the bathroom, you can't wait, so you just turn around and puke out a window. And I was just like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And they actually told me like, you know, it won't be gross or anything, it'll just be like Snapple and pineapple. It wasn't, by the way, like we'll get into that later. But I was like, yep, okay, that's fine. And so fast forward to the actual day 1 of filming. We all had to meet up in this spot in Brooklyn to get on a shuttle bus to the like satellite holding area, which is where they had like wardrobe, makeup, and then that's where we had like lunch, and they actually had breakfast for us. But anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So one of the awesome things about this gig was that all of the people that they hired for extras were like my age. So when we weren't filming, we were just like hanging out and like carrying on and having a good time. Like it was really awesome. Like everybody was so cool and chill. Like it was just an awesome gig, like even just for that, because like we go have fun on set and then we go back to the holding area, and just like I remember that we spent like a good 2 hours playing that game where like you hold your phone up to to your head and it has like a thing and you all have to like describe what it is and the person has to guess. We had like the most intense, I don't know what it's called, but like we had so many intense games of like that freaking game while we were waiting, like while we weren't shooting. But anyway, so we all meet in this spot in Brooklyn and get on the bus, and everybody had been cast to be like a certain stereotype. And so there were like 5 or 6, I probably can't remember all of them. There were sorority girls, jocks, stoners, nerds. How I was not cast as a nerd is beyond me, and the vomit girls, which I was one of. And so as people were like getting on the bus, you were just like, nobody was shy, which was awesome. Like we were all like instantly talking and like again just like carrying on and having a good time. And so one of the first things that everybody asked each other is like, what were you cast as? And so this one was like, oh, I'm a sorority girl, oh, I'm a jock, and I was just like, I'm a vomit girl. And at first I was just like, yep, that's what I got cast as. Like someone looked at my headshot and went, that girl is gonna look really good vomiting on HBO. But anyway, within like 30 minutes, being a vomit girl became a badge of honor. I was so relieved when another girl got on the bus and I like asked her like, what were you cast as? And she was like, I'm a vomit girl. And I was just like, okay, me too, I'm not alone, thank God. And I think there were like 5 of us total that were cast to be vomit girls. So anyway, like once everybody was on the bus, we had to like fill out the vouchers and the tax forms and like just, you know, work stuff. Just like a little bit of paperwork, and then we were taken to Satellite Holding, which is in this like church basement in like another part of Brooklyn. And there we went through hair, makeup, wardrobe, and I was like, honestly, like a lot of things about this gig threw me for a loop because again, I was 18. I had never been on a set at all. This was my first professional acting job, and I was, you know, I still am primarily a stage performer, so I was just gonna like, what? Like a lot of things were just like, what? And the first thing that like threw me for a loop was that like we got there and there was like breakfast and I was like, what the like, this is awesome, but what? Anyway, so like, you know, this story is actually part of like a much longer story of this whole experience because like there were so many awesome and really funny things about it. But I don't want to like spend, you know, 2 hours making a video, so let's just like move on with this story. So on the first day of filming, we did not shoot the vomit scene that day, but I actually was featured on the first day. They said like, who's okay dancing? And I was just like, me. And so I was featured dancing, and then Lena Dunham and Andrew Rennell stole the guy that I was dancing with, and I had to walk off like, okay, weird, bye. And the first day of filming ran really late. Like I think we got released from set at like midnight or like 11. And so we had to be at the meeting area at like 10, like not as early as the first day. Like the first day I think I had to be there at like 7, but the second day I think I had to be there at like 10 or like later. But anyway, so pretty soon after we got set that day, we were going to do the vomit scene, and there were like 5 vomit girls, but they had to choose who was gonna be like the featured vomit girl. Oh my god. And so they take the 5 of us over to like, I guess an assistant director, I don't know, and they put the 5 of us and he looks at us and then he like cuts 2 people, and so then he takes the remaining 3 of us over to Lena Dunham, who directs the show, and then she like looks at us and I guess she like pointed at me, and then they were just like, all right, you're doing this, and I was just like, what? Like, okay. And so one of the assistant directors and the prop person took me to the backyard of this house because we were shooting this literally in like a regular house in Brooklyn. So they walked me into the backyard, and the prop person hands me a can of O'Doul's, which is non-alcoholic beer. She made a point to say like, there's no alcohol in it, like you're definitely underage. So they took me into the backyard and were like, we're gonna practice the vomiting before you actually do it on camera. And so the prop person hands me a can of O'Doul's. Now is probably a good time to mention that at that point I had never tasted beer in my life, and this scenario is precisely how I found out that I don't like the taste of beer. And so she said like, all right, like take a really big swig, like fill your mouth, and then just like vomit it out. And I specifically remember that the assistant director was just like pointed to this like garden ornament, like a freaking lawn gnome, and was just like, aim for that. And I was just like, okay. And so I tried it like the first time, they were like, nah, like do it a little more like this, like let it like fall out of your mouth. And so I did it the second time, they're like, that's good. And I was like, okay, good to know that I have now gone through vomiting 101. Didn't learn that in an acting class. And so after I did my vomit rehearsal, I just asked them like, should I go back to Holding? Because Holding was like a block away. Or should I just kind of like hang around here? And they were like, like you could go back to Holding if you want, but we're probably gonna shoot this in the next like 10-15 minutes. So like just, you know, stay close, like don't get too comfortable. And then I proceeded to sprint to craft services, which was like at the midpoint between the set set and holding, so it was like half a block away. I just ran to the craft services table, grabbed a cup of something. I really don't know what it was, but I just needed to get the taste of beer out of my mouth because it was so freaking gross. So anyway, about 10 minutes after that, we went inside the house to actually shoot the scene. And again, I had never worked on a TV show. I had never worked on like on-camera acting. I had never really done this. I'd never been on a set. So I didn't really know how things had worked. Like I had learned some from like the day before, but like I was 18 and fucking stupid. Like now I'm 21, I'm still stupid. I'm just like more experienced at being stupid, if that makes any kind of sense. And anyway, this scene actually wound up being cut from the final cut of the episode, which makes me quite sad. But anyway, so I was like standing there, and I think it must have taken a solid 30 minutes for them to set up the shot. It actually wasn't going to be me vomiting out a window like they had initially told me. What I was actually going to be doing was fake vomiting into this guy's hat. And so I'm standing in like really close quarters in this tiny ass house in Brooklyn. This entire gig can be described as like trying to avoid blunt force trauma for 2 days straight, because TV cameras are gigantic. There's like a boom mic here. There's 50 people crammed into this tiny area. And you know, it's a regular house in Brooklyn. Like it's not set up as a film set. Like there's not a lot of space. So I was like standing there for probably like a half hour, or it at least felt like a half hour, because I was just like standing there doing nothing and just like staring at the wall while they were setting up this shot and like setting up lights. And like now that I work professionally as a videographer, I kind of totally get that. And so luckily I actually only had to do the vomiting 3 times. And the first time was a rehearsal, which was like, they didn't shoot it, they just rehearsed it. And I remember they did like a count off, and it was like 1, 2, 3. And on 1, like one girl did one thing. On 2, this one girl that was standing next to me vomited into a plant. And on 3, I had to grab this guy's hat and just like barf into it. And so they were like 1, 2, 3. And then on 3, I grabbed the guy's hat into it. And then after I did it like this, like the hat that I grabbed was like a fitted. It was like a baseball cap. So there were like those little holes in it. And so now I'm like standing there holding this hat. There's like beer seeping through and falling on the floor, and I'm like trying not to get it on my shoes. And within seconds, there is like 2 PAs cleaning up the beer at our feet. Like there's another person who runs out from wardrobe with another hat for the guy. There's somebody like fixing my hair. There's somebody adjusting my shirt, and I'm just like standing there like, what the fuck is going on right now? Because I was so used to like stage performance, and especially like theater situations, where it's very much a DIY situation. If your hair needs to be fixed, well, you need to do that yourself. If your costume needs to be fixed, you probably need to do that yourself. But like within seconds of doing like even just this rehearsal, there were like 5 people swarmed around us like resetting. And I was just standing there like frozen, like what? And so we wound up doing 2 takes in total, like plus the rehearsal. And really thank God, because O'Doul's tastes like literal ass. And yeah, that's the story of the weirdest thing I have ever been asked to do as a performer. Like 2 years on, that is still the weirdest thing I have had to do as a performer. And I've been asked to do some weird shit. And actually a couple months after this shoot, I got a call and they asked me to work on the show again. I wound up being cut at the last minute. That kind of sucked, but I'm really glad that I got to have this experience, because it has spawned like this story, which I feel is just like so ridiculous, but I kind of love it. And that is the end of this video. Comment, like, and subscribe. Share some of your weird performing stories, and I will see y'all next Friday.